Welcome to the Equity Blueprint Podcast. My name is Dana Wilson, CEO and founder of CHIP, which stands for Changing How Individuals Prosper. And our goal is to help you find financial professionals who can suit your individual needs. I started this podcast to normalize a conversation around money and wealth and what that really means to our communities and just the evolution of our lives. Money isn't always the sexiest topic or fun topic to talk about, but hey, that's why you're here. To not just learn more, but really kick back, relax, and hear other people's journeys and how they've used money, how they related to generational wealth or wealth building to become their own, what I like to call financial architects of their lives. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the dope conversations that you're about to hear with people that inspire me from all across the world. All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Equity Blueprint Podcast. This time I said it correct. Last time I feel like I'm always in this focus of reintroducing the previous podcast, which was the Included series. But if you have not checked that out, definitely go back and check out previous conversations and episodes from the Included series podcast, which is now the Equity Blueprint Podcast that you're listening to in this moment. Again, my name is Dana Wilson, your host for this evening, and super excited to bring on our guest, Rob. Welcome to the stage. Welcome to the podcast. My new BFF.
Thanks for having me, Dana.
Absolutely. How are you doing?
I mean, things are awesome over here. Obviously, we met at one of my summits at Amazon. We're still doing some of those big things. So just kind of pretty excited for what the future has to hold.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like there's so much for the future. I don't know if you're a Black Mirror watcher. Do you watch Black Mirror?
I do not.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I have a mirror. I'm Black. I don't know.
Podcast over. all of that is also all the way relevant as well. And to your point, in the same as well. But yeah, if you haven't checked it out, I was going to go dive into that really quickly. But yeah, it's a whole thing if you have not watched it. And for anyone else who has watched it, yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. But again, super excited to have you on. Of course, our goal is here to continue to normalize the conversation around how we think about wealth, generational wealth, and all the things that come with just understanding our money. And I'm always curious to hear everyone's kind of first memory with money, what that first experience was for you and how that's kind of evolved over time. So definitely would love to just hop into that and go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's funny, unique story. I think my first experience with money or how I understood money was probably I had a pretty wealthy uncle. And I was not wealthy by any means, right? But I had a wealthy uncle. He lived up in Fairfield, Connecticut, and he would always have like his great nieces and nephews come up for the summer, just to kind of get us used to what success might look like, right? And he dropped a lot of gems on me, a lot of good information, and he used to play like different mind games with us, and teaching us about the value of money. He'd take us places, then kind of talk to us about how much that actually cost, and just kind of get us used to a conversation that, as you and I have discussed before, we don't really have enough, which is how does money work? What's the value of money? So that indoctrination, I think I started going there when I was 7, and it wasn't every summer, but it was, several times. It definitely it set the tone for how I view money today. I didn't have that kind of influence growing up as far as my mother and father, and how they viewed money. They didn't talk about it very much, and they probably weren't very responsible with money. So a lot of mistakes I probably made early on. My first big mistake, as I think of it, I just joined the Navy. You get out of boot camp. My only other job ever was like working as a grocery store bagger at Food Line, right? So that kind of lets you know how much interaction I'd had with money at that time. You got the Navy or get out of boot camp, and you have 3 months paycheck saved up. I knew I wanted to propose to my high school sweetheart, so I go and buy her what now we affectionately call the diamond dust earring or the diamond dust wedding ring. Like, I mean, that thing,
Not the diamond dust.
it was dust. It was so small. Um, but
It was
it's
it was
what I
the thought
volunteered
though. It was
for,
the thought, right?
right? And I bought it on credit from like one of these sketchy places that kind of prey on the military folks as soon as they come out. Um, and like I never really received a bill, so I was like, "We good." I get all the way back to Virginia, where I'm from, Virginia Beach, and Bill Diaz. Now it tells you I'm old. I spent 23 years in the Navy, and I've been at Amazon for 5 years, and I still remember this guy's name. This guy hits me up. He's like, "Hey, this is Bill Diaz." I'm like, "How do I know you?" He's like, "Well, you owe us some money." Right. And that was the first time I really interacted with like debt. Like, this is debt. And oh, by the way, I'm not doing it right. But it made a light go off in a different kind of way. I was like, okay, obviously I have to deal with this thing. And it was probably like $2,000 or $3,000, right? Which was a lot of money to me at that time. But it made me start to realize like how I had to prioritize things in a way I'd never had to before, right? These conversations I hadn't really had with my parents and even my aunt and uncle, they told me what it was. They didn't tell me how to deal with it, right? So um, from that moment on, like obviously I figured out how to pay down this debt. Budgeting was like a cuss word to us at the time. I'm like, budgeting? I'm from Virginia Beach. We don't budget. Like,
Listen, I feel
what's
like
it
it
really
still is.
mean?
Anytime I even open that word, it's just like it's become a negative thing, a negative connotation.
Yeah, and it shouldn't be, right? Like
Mhm.
you should probably have an idea of what you're doing with your money, what you're doing with your time, what you're doing with your energy, and it's all budgeting, right? Like, it should not be a bad way to look at things. But I kind of really understood how to do that. Got myself back on track. I was able to purchase my first house when I was 20 years old. So I made that turnaround fast because that debt was real. And then from there, I just kind of never really stopped, looking at different ways to get better. And even now, I'm still learning. I gravitated toward you all and all the people on our financial panel because, I've learned some things, but I haven't learned nearly what I want to learn in this world when it comes to finances.
Yeah, and I feel like it's just a evolution of learning. It's something that you just never stop doing because as you, of course, make more money, there's more problems and more situations and things that you have to deal with.
Yeah,
Nobody said it better than Biggie,
yeah, he
right?
said
And
it. He
it's
said it right.
listen, I feel like this is I love hip hop. I grew up in the 90s, so it's always the intersection between like money and the hip hop verses that we heard
All of it.
growing up.
Money, power, respect, all of that.
At least for the 80s babies, 90s 90s kids in the room, this is what it was. But to your point, I feel like there was definitely always that discussion around like seeing people visually with money, which was clearly your experience. But then it was the tangible step of okay, well, I see this, but how does this work in reality in the way that I'm growing and shaping and trying to do what I'm trying to do. So what I'm curious about too is like what was your because I think sometimes, especially in our communities, when we tie our situations to debt, right? We have been told basically that debt is bad, right? And debt can't really be used as a tool for anything that we need to do that's positive. But I also think that there's a place where there's other communities and other resources and businesses that have used debt as a tool to
Good
create
and bad debt
further,
for sure.
yeah, exactly, to create further wealth opportunities or build their businesses and things like that. So in that moment of looking at debt and realizing, hey, in this situation, it's not something that I want to have a part of my overall, portfolio or wealth journey in this moment. What were your feelings around debt then, and how has that maybe changed over time in your thought process?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think mostly the feelings at that moment was fear,
Yeah.
right? Like this relatively now looking back at it, this relatively small amount of money, I had to be fearful because I didn't have the education to match the situation. Right? So like you don't have to be afraid if you know what to do, right?
Mhm.
You only have to be afraid when you don't know what to do. So I think that's definitely evolved over time from that moment on with the budgeting and just kind of putting my priorities in the right place, as well as working pretty hard to make more money, right? And then invest in those in some smarter things, right? Like at first, we jumped into the stock market with not enough information. Um, if you do it without the right amount of information, obviously it becomes a lot like going to the casino and the house wins, right? So
Yeah.
Backed off of that, kind of went more into mutual funds. But I think the key piece there is that we never stopped finding ways to invest. We never got so gun shy that we didn't try to save something away, squirrel away. Now, obviously, you and I are probably around the same age. And, back then we were always told, you work hard, get your 401k or your pension, which praise the Lord, I have one of those. Um, and, everything will work out. Just
Mhm.
invest in your 401k, have your pension, you'll be able to retire at some
Right.
ripe old age,
Stack
right?
stack some prayers in between there, and you're good to go.
Exactly. And we know that now we've learned that's not necessarily the best way. And some of these younger folks have like cornered the market on not even doing any of that, right? Like
Mhm.
they're so advanced in how they think. But for myself, um, it's more around like real estate, having a rental at all times, if not two or three, um, making sure that the investments I make are safe. I definitely was able to leverage that pension in ways that, I mean, if I'd say we did one thing in the military right and we took it away, same president we have now, it would have been those pensions, right? Which now they've
Mhm.
kind of converted to more of a glorified 401k.
Mhm.
Um, so I definitely am happy I benefited from that. And I think it's one of the things that I'm able to leverage now, along with some of those um, other tools to keep my wealth and build my wealth and be able to retire at a reasonable age.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, let's talk about that too, because you mentioned that you had bought your first house when you were 20, which is not something I would consider a lot of people are able to do, or even really thought about doing at such an early age.
Yeah.
What really made you want to do that then? I know you kind of touched on it a bit, right? Just having and making, swifter and smarter choices when it came to your money. But what was your thought process in that moment at that time frame, and how has that really maneuvered into a lot of the real estate that you own now?
You know what's funny about that? It's the same thing across the board, right?
Mhm.
So if you're going to do it, fill in the blank, right? So like if you're going to continue to live somewhere, why are you paying someone else's bills? Right? That's the mindset I had. So I was
Mhm.
like, well, why don't I own this? Right. And I thought that pretty early. The same thing like when I re-enlisted the first time as an enlisted sailor, it's like, well, if you're gonna re-enlist and you're gonna make this a career, why don't you apply to be a naval officer and get paid more money? You know what I'm saying? And have a bigger scope and do all of those things. So I think that's kind of the driver for that for me. It was if you're going to pay someone's bills, why don't you make it your own bills, right? Why don't you have something? And I'd watched my parents try to attain that and achieve that, and they did, and then they didn't.
Mhm.
Um, and so I knew I wanted to do some things differently. I think looking at a lot of my parents, mistakes or missteps was a blessing for me in a way, right? Like it was definitely not easy growing up or whatever, but it gave me the information I needed to know what I didn't want to do, the mistakes I didn't want to make, and get kind of ahead of some of the pitfalls that they had. All right. And then when you look at like how I looked at buying other properties, well, the Navy helped me with that as well, right? So they move you all around. You have this property. The first rental I had was out of necessity. It was,
Mhm.
after the market crashed. What was that? 2005, 2006 timeframe.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
I remember that.
yeah. So I sold that first house. I like
Mhm.
doubled the value, right? It was like $80,000 little starter home on a corner. It was a beautiful home. Um, and then I remember my wife was pregnant, but the market was doing like all kinds of crazy stuff. And I was like, yes, now is the time. So we sold it for 180.
So that's
And then,
amazing in that moment that you felt that way too, because I feel like that's the moment, even now, right, where people start to run away, where it's like, okay, now I have to, instead of making a decision to do more, which is what a lot of people are doing in this moment, it's always that retract, retract. Let me make sure I have enough cash on hand. But you had the foresight to kind of say, hey, in this moment, although there's a lot of important life things going on, this is when I double down,
yeah,
which is
absolutely.
pretty incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it was a blessing and a curse, right? Because we
Yeah.
did have to buy another house.
Yes.
Um, and so when we did that, that house was not the value, right?
Mhm.
So we purchased this other home, and then the military is like, hey, it's time for you to move. We go to move, and it's like, this house isn't going to make you any money. You're going to lose money. So I was forced to rent it out, moved down to Florida, came back, and then I was like, this rental thing's working out pretty well, right? And that's kind of the catalyst for, okay, we always need to have those properties, right? It was life
Mhm.
lessons that kind of forced me into it. But to your point, um, I think a lot of it is being fearless as well, right? I mentor a lot of people, and one thing I always tell like younger people is you have time to make mistakes,
Mhm.
right? And something we always say in business, we say in the military, we say pretty much everywhere is if you're gonna fail, fail fast, right? Like just do it. And you have, if you do it and you make that mistake, maybe it doesn't pan out, you have time to make that correction and still end up on top. But if you drag your feet and you fail slow, you just fail and you can't correct it later, right? So I think that mindset and a bit of fearlessness is what's allowed me to kind of leverage every opportunity I've ever been given and turn it into something a little bit more, you know?
Yeah. So what does more look like now at this point in your career and evolution, like from just a financial standpoint? No, right now you're in a different space where you're able to do more, probably have a lot more, properties and insight. What does it look like now or things that you want to attain? What does that financial success look for you at this point?
You know, it's beautiful what you just asked because for me, it's not about what I can attain. I
Hmm.
spoke about my Uncle Tom and my Aunt Mary and just the impact they had on me. And one of the key lessons and motivators for him that he taught me was kind of like you kind of have a responsibility, right? And he used to always say, you can't get where you're going if you keep stopping to help other people, right? And if you think of that in its physical manifestation, it's literally true, right?
Yeah.
Every time you stop, you're not moving forward. You can't get where you're going. Um, but he didn't say that from a stance of don't help other people, right? And so now I'm kind of stepping into that. I can do things to help other people. Whether it's with my time, with my finances, with my resources, with my network, that's where I am right now. And it's a beautiful place, if I'm honest. It feels good, right? And it's what I've
Mhm.
always been trying to get to. It's what I'm watching you do as well, right? So hats off to you, where you get to a place where you realize what it is that you actually have. And it's not just
Mhm.
financial. Um, Finances are good. I think it's a good thing for some of my younger nieces and nephews, and obviously my two daughters, to see where I'm at and how I move and, what I value and how I use my resources. Um, but it's important to be very responsible,
Mhm.
show them what they should be doing, and talk to them even more in depth than my uncle talked to me, right? Like he told me what, he didn't
Mhm.
tell me how,
Yep.
right? So it's important to me to use this time that I have right now to tell the people I care about, the younger generation, the people who I'm trying to inspire. I have to tell them how, right? Like, so this is one vehicle where I'm able to do that and say, hey, here's where you invest. Here's where some of the mistakes I made. Um, that's kind of where I'm at right now. I'm at a place where I think I've figured out 100% who I am and what I have to offer. And now I'm at a place where it's like, okay, we get to share this. It's a really good feeling. It's a good time for me right now.
It is. It's a beautiful thing too, because I feel like a lot of times we don't. We're just running off of action and things that we see visually, right? And there's no real step back to understanding the mindset of how we're changing from a financial standpoint, what is actually bringing us joy and happiness in all ways that also kind of come back to our wallet in some way, shape, or form.
Hmm.
And then from there, like that impact that we realize after we've kind of figured out those two things, where we want to lay our heads and how we want to think about legacy and what that means in that how. Like I like that we're having this conversation around the how, especially you mentioning, your family, your two daughters. So when you're having the conversation with them, like how is that how going, or what is
Yeah.
the surprises that you're seeing from them, even in their communication style around money or the thoughts and perspectives that they have?
Well, they're different. They're both very different. So my 18-year-old fully gets it. And I think my 14-year-old is starting to get it. But my
Mhm.
18-year-old, who's kind of gone through the progression, she's in college now. She has her own little bit of debt that she's working with or whatever.
Hmm.
But she's had a lot of things that we've done to set her up for success as well, right? So we're kind of in that phase of making her less fearful
Hmm.
about money. Like
Yeah.
she got her first job when she was like early 17, and all she did was save it because she knew she was going to college,
Hmm.
and she didn't know she was going to work when she was in college. So she was like, I have to save this money, all of it. Didn't spend any money. And then, as she got into college, she has these friends, she has things she wants to do, and we are augmenting her income. So it's like she's letting off a little bit, but she still budgets.
Hmm.
She's still looking for ways to invest. She's still like looking for scholarships and grants because she wants to travel to Japan. She's minoring in Japanese,
Oh,
right?
wow.
So
Good for
like,
her.
yeah, she's a
That's
beast.
awesome.
Yeah, she's both of my daughters are like different. They're different than me. Praise the Lord, right? So, um, so she's in this phase where she's trying to figure out how to use resources that I never even considered leveraging, right?
Mhm.
And I think that's the how piece, right? That's this conversation. That's the conversation we had with some of the other panelists, like sharing that knowledge of, well, where are these resources? We spoke with Randy about using NACA to buy homes. I didn't
Mhm.
just keep that information for myself. I'm sharing that with everyone. I never heard of it. I'm
Mhm.
sharing that with everyone I know who hasn't bought a home before, right? And I think that's where it needs to be. It needs to be in that resource sharing stage, because these children, they are sponges, right? And especially if they see, they see, okay, Dad has a nice car, Uncle Rob has a nice car, Uncle Rob has a nice house. Okay, Uncle Rob's gone where? He's gone on vacation where, right? Like they see these things, and all they want to know is what I'm doing. So I love to have that conversation with them and say, a lot of it started with budgeting, smart investing, um, and doing everything with a purpose. I think is another underrated tool, right? Like my favorite word probably in the dictionary is intentionality, right? Everything has to have a reason, or why are you doing it? And so when you break that out for them and you ask them, okay, you want to do what? So like, okay, you want to go to Japan. What does that look like for you? Does it look like me paying for it? Of course, that's what it looked like to her. But in reality,
All great questions. All great questions. Right.
yeah, in reality, it wasn't, well, I just want to go to Japan. Daddy needs to
Right.
foot the bill. It's daddy's always here to support you. You have that support system. I didn't work this hard, so you have to struggle. But what steps are you taking? So she's doing that research, right? Which is something I didn't learn how to do early, that I had to learn how to do later. I can't imagine where I'd be right now, right? So
Mhm.
do the research, understand what's available to you, leverage your network, which is something I'm also late doing. Um, those are the actual tools, right? The products are the products,
Yeah.
right? And I mean, you guys are the experts on that. You won't catch me trying to talk about that kind of stuff, right? The products are the products, but the research is something we own. It's a responsibility we have. And I think that's probably one of the bigger lessons, not only for myself, but that I try to share with my daughters, my nieces, nephews, people I mentor. Do the homework and then come to me and tell me how I can be a better resource to you.
Oh yeah, because I feel like even simple things, right? I mean, we're always think about when you're going out or you're going to meet some friends or you're going out to dinner or you're planning for some event and you didn't really plan financially for it, so you get there or you pay for it and you're angry, right? You're
Yeah,
there and you're mad, right?
yeah,
And that's not a fun place to be when you haven't
horrible
really
place.
properly prepared because it's like you want to go to whatever this thing is, whether it's a vacation, a friend's event, or something like that, or even if it's just a basic dinner to just meet up with people. But now you're there because you didn't prepare for it. The dates come and it's tomorrow, and you're like, oh my God, I got to pay for this thing. I got to do all this stuff even
Yeah,
before I go to this thing, whether it's like, get my hair done, my nails done, a fresh haircut, like whatever that is. Now there's a bills on top of just this single bill. And now we're showing up and we're angry at at everyone, right? And it
correct.
happens and it's real. So I like the fact about taking time to do the research, and it's not researching, not talking anything about products and stuff like that, but it's like, what's the thing that you want to do? And what are all the steps that you're going to take or need as you're crafting and being able to be fully present in this thing or experience that you want to have so that you are more prepared when you get there. And to your point, I'm like, there's so many tools and resources out there to be able to kind of collect that information down to, okay, I know I want to stay here. How, is it a walkable area? Am I going to have to Uber everywhere? Right. Like those are all things, I'm sure that she's looking up and thinking about and researching in the
She
same way that
researches everything.
everyone can do. Right. Yeah.
That girl, I'm not worried about her. I'll tell you that. I'm not worried about her or her sister, but she's in it, right? And I'm
Hmm.
watching her be very meticulous and
Yeah.
calculated. Um, and when she wants to achieve something, like she's definitely been an introvert,
Hmm.
but she understands. She's watching me. She's watching me in business and some of the things that I have to do that are probably outside of my comfort level, even, and I'm way more extroverted than her. And she understands that she has to do these things. So she's like doing auditioning for dance clubs, even though she's not the best dancer. Like she's doing
Hey,
whatever she can
that's
do,
what dance club is for. She gonna come
just
out and be like
build that
whipping the
network,
thing in.
build that network. And I'll tell you, I'm so proud of her. Like she's going to be an RA next year. So again, I told her we're going to pay for the first couple of years of college, right?
Mhm.
Because I can, right? So how are you going to figure out the last 2 years, right? I'm going to reduce your debt. I'm not going to eliminate your debt. I'm not going to live life for you. So
Mhm.
she's like, okay, I need a job. So she's going to be an RA. She's working at what do you call those, escape room right now in her
Oh,
spare
really?
time. Like she's not just sitting there waiting on me to solve her issue. And it makes
Mhm.
me want to solve her issues,
Yeah.
right? And that's how life works as well, right? Like when people see you doing something for yourself,
Mhm.
they feel a lot more desire towards helping you get to your goals, right? So she's demonstrating those traits and those principles. She's putting in the hard work. And that's what I want all my nieces, nephews, people I mentor. That's what I want them to do. I don't mind helping them. All right. Um, I shouldn't have to stop where I'm going to help
Mhm.
you. I should maybe have to slow down so I can bring you along. All right. And I think setting that expectation really sets people up for success. People who want to be successful, it sets them up for success.
Oh, yeah. Because a lot of people, they want other people to do it for them, right?
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to being financially prepared. "Oh, I'm in this hole. Can you just get me out?" It's like, okay, well, what does it look like when you get out? What are you going to do as you're in this situation so that I can help you? Because just waving a wand and taking care of it is going to put you back in the same place that you keep finding yourself in until you take the time and the opportunity to really learn and do. Right, we have to get to a point where we're actually doing. So I'm excited to hear more about her, the legacy that she's building for herself,
She's
and as she
different.
continues to grow. Yeah, that's
She's
really,
different. She's gonna
really
do well.
awesome.
I'm not. And the other one, like my youngest, she's a different type of determined. Like she has always known that she likes nicer things. She always has. But then her mindset has always been, I want to go into medicine
Mm,
because I need to make a lot of money. And I feel like she does like helping people, so she wants to go into sports medicine. Um, and
awesome.
that's
I
where her
actually
mind
almost did
is.
that. I almost did that for a minute.
Yeah. She understands that she likes nice things. So nobody's telling you not to, right? So does
Mhm.
daddy. Daddy likes really nice things, right? So
She's like, go forth.
do the work. And as long as they do that, like I look at supporting them for the rest of their lives. Like I love watching them grow in that way.
I love that. I love that for you and your family. And
Yeah.
I think it's a beautiful thing to be able just to watch someone grow and walk in their purpose. I don't have kids, but I have two nieces who I feel equally inspired by in the same way. So it's always nice to just kind of look at their future and the things that they're learning and how they're growing and maneuvering through life and just figuring out life as they go. Because
Yeah.
it definitely goes by fast.
Yeah. I got a couple of nieces. I call them my starter daughters. My oldest
Listen,
sister's daughters. Like we were closer to the same age. So it's like, yeah, I've always
listen,
been there
they
for
they
them.
are your kids as far as I'm
Yeah.
concerned. They are your kids as well.
No
So
doubt.
what does with all of that too, like what does financial joy look like for you in this moment, right? I know you talk a lot about your family, your daughters. And what does what does that joy look like for you and that happiness as it relates to just building that financial joy and even just as you continue to think about, your legacy and the impact you want to make?
You know, it's funny. I still work for a corporate entity. And I think that joy for me, honestly, is being able to be authentic in this environment without worrying about the consequences because I'm not stressed about money, right? Like everybody wants more money. Ain't nobody trying to quit their job today, but um, I'm not stressed about money. I'm definitely not worried about money to the point where I'm willing to change who I am or my integrity or the things I care about or the things I think are right or wrong, right? So I watch a lot of my colleagues really go through that moment where they feel like they have to make a business decision. I literally was talking to someone today who was like, I don't want to leave money on the table. And I'm like, that's a sad way to live, you know? So I think for me, my financial freedom allows me to just be my authentic self without trying to figure out who's going to let me, right? That's not a thing for me. I'm going to be who I am, and the moment that I can't be supported in that way, then maybe I can just move on. You know, that's where that freedom is for me right now.
Wow. Yeah. I feel like sometimes we're held captive based on the decisions that we have to make because of our financial situation, right? It's like we walk into a job and we know that we want something else, whether it's something at that place or that corporation, or it's somewhere we want to be at maybe that next, 2.5, 3 years, but we didn't walk in the door with that in mind and we didn't set ourselves up for success financially to be able to be in a position, to your point, to make that move, right? We came into the door, we were all excited about all the shiny bells and whistles of the people and other things that we tend to get distracted by. And we wake up 2 years later and it's like, oh my God, I'm supposed to be at my exit plan. And now I can't be there. And now I'm actually handcuffed to make decisions based on, the situation or the lifestyle that I've become accustomed to. And I can't exit the way I would like to.
Yeah, and I'll
Yeah.
tell you, Dana, like I think of a couple of people who worked for me last year,
Mhm.
and they deserved to be promoted. I got them promoted. They did everything right, right? And I couldn't understand why they were so grateful. I felt like they did the work, they earned it, XYZ. But one thing I'll say is that, one of them pointed out to me how multiple times in their past, their supervisor would take credit for their work. And that's what the need for money, the need for a promotion, the need for these financial resources forces some people to do, right? Where it's like you have these people who are doing everything right, they're working very hard for you, and you almost have to press them down in order to push yourself up. That's what it allows me to not have to do. I can't even imagine wanting to do that when you see these people. I mean, they are grinding. This company is competitive, right? And all they want is the credit they deserve. They don't want anything extra. They don't want you to give them a hookup, right? There's no DEI promotions over here. They just want what they're
Right.
owed.
Say it again for the people in the back.
Hey, listen, you know how I feel about DEI. You know
Listen,
how I feel
listen.
about that. I'm not
I
even like
know.
that's a whole nother podcast.
I know it is. It's all right. Part two bonus episode. Look out for it. They aren't ready. They aren't ready.
They're not.
But yeah, no, I mean it's a sad thing, especially from a financial perspective, when people feel that they have to do that, and that drives their integrity and their biases and their character to make decisions based on what it feels like to uplift them, as opposed to being in that position to uplift the person who is actually doing the work and putting in the hours and deserves that
Feels
promotion.
better. I'll tell you, it's
Yeah.
like giving a gift at Christmas, depending on who you are.
Yeah.
Like some
Yeah.
people only want to receive gifts, and I'm probably not talking to you, right? Like that's not my target audience right here. But those
Hmm.
people who like to receive gifts at Christmas, like it feels the exact same way when you're lifting up these hardworking individuals who work for you or work with you. It's what we should be doing, right? And if everybody did it, none of the other stuff would be required. The problem is you get people who kind of break the chain, and then you get the domino effect of like, oh, well, I need to get mine too. And then it becomes a get mine ceremony instead of a lifting up other people's ceremony.
Yeah, absolutely. And what did you like? What would you say for people who are in that position and trying to kind of navigate out of that space as they're looking at their career, and how they start to pivot or even look for more internal sponsorship opportunities? Because I feel like you are, someone who would speak, impactfully about other people and how they can kind of maneuver. How do they develop or um, develop those relationships within that space, or find ways to kind of find those individuals within that space if their direct person that they have to report to is not being that champion in that moment or not at all.
Yeah. Part of it is charting a course, right? Like
Mhm.
understanding what do you want to do? And I had a conversation with a VP recently, and I asked her a very similar question. Like I asked her, hey, if I'm looking to work directly for you, if you were to hire someone, what would they need to say to you to make you excited about hiring them? And she said, well, first she asked me a question. She asked me what my dream job was.
Mhm.
And I told her, general manager of the Baltimore Ravens, because that's what I do here. And because I think I could do that job really well. But
All right, we're gonna put that into the ethos. It's out on the podcast now, so we're gonna.
listen, listen, anywhere in that organization, I'm there. I'll take a pay cut. Let's do it. But that was my dream job, right? And she got me talking about it. She was like, "That's what I'm looking for." And I had to pause for a minute, like think about what she wants passion. So
Mm.
first, you have to identify what you care about and what you're passionate about, right? And I think that was probably one of the best pieces of advice I've ever been given, to be honest, because like I'm passionate about leadership, but I don't think of it in that way, right? Like I don't advertise myself in that way. So it's like that's solid advice. That's thing one is know what you want and how important it is to you and be passionate about it. And then two, find people in that space who are already doing it. Like the same way I found you, like, I'm looking at some things on the side and you're doing those things. And I'm like, okay, let's talk. Like I want to get to know how to get from point A to point B. You have to have those conversations and be vulnerable a little bit and say, listen, I'm not where you are, but this is where I want to be. What advice do you have for me? And seek out that advice. Nobody's going to come to you and say, hey, you look like you need help over there. That's not how life works. It's just not a real thing. Um, and then after that, be fearless. Be fearless. Like I said very early in the conversation, fail fast. Like if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But if you don't put in that effort or you don't seek out those things, well, I promise you, you will not have them, right? So those are the three pieces that I think those are the only things you need, right? And a positive attitude. That's it.
Oh yeah, and positive attitude put a whole a whole thing around that, right?
That's
Because no
clutch.
one, yeah, it's just like you have to have that, that mindset or that I'm going to be able to do this thing and have that outlook, and even if sometimes it's not necessarily how you feel, but I am a big believer in the fact that you can push yourself to feel that way, but you can't walk around with that woe is me attitude because that gets you nowhere, right? And people,
Yeah,
sometimes foster or like to live in those spaces, and then you attract other people who are
a
in
hundred
those
percent,
spaces, right?
100%. When we're going through it, there are always people who can't wait to have that conversation with you about how you're
Mhm.
going through it, and they are too.
Yeah.
And then every once in a while, they'll even share that conversation that you did not intend for them to share. So maybe you just don't do that. Yeah.
Exactly. It's like, please keep all of that away. And I want to be on the happiness factor and the
Yeah.
train that's going forward and not the one that's like continuing to pull me in the directions that I don't want to be anymore.
I'll tell
Um,
you how, though, Dana. I'll
yeah.
tell you, a lot of people, when they hear that advice, it falls on deaf ears because they're going through it, right? So I don't want to speak from, first off, everybody goes through it, right? I go through it sometimes too.
Absolutely.
So let's start
Absolutely.
there. But also, the advice I would have for a person who feels like they're going through it and they're like, be positive. Like, do you know what's going on with me? I always give the same advice, right? Align your sphere of concern with your sphere of influence. And all that means
Mhm.
is don't fret over things you do not control. And in that same sphere, if you do control it, still don't fret over it. Like do something about it, right? Either way, like, so you got a very finite number of things that you should actually be concerned about. I can't be concerned about even a promotion, right? If I don't get promoted, I just don't get promoted. I can't promote me,
Mhm.
right? Like I can do the work though. I can do the work. I can put the data out there that makes it very difficult for someone to deny me a promotion if that's what I seek, right? That's what I can control. And then if you don't get the promotion, you just didn't get the promotion, right? Work harder, do more. And if you feel like there's something else going on there, then leave, right? Those are your options, right? You can be positive the whole time you do that because you're controlling only your things. But as soon as you start worrying about things outside of that sphere of concern, that's where the stress comes in because now you don't feel like you have control because you don't have control. And like nobody handles that well, right? Like, put yourself in a car with somebody who can't drive. I'm not going to name no names. Oldest daughter.
Listen, I can name
But
some, but
put yourself in a
I
car with
won't do
somebody who
that
can't
today.
drive. Let them drive and see how you feel, right? Like panic attack, anxiety, stress because you're not in control.
Yeah, all of that. And what I really took away from what you just said, which I'm loving the gems that you just dropped, and I think that was an important one. And I was trying to repeat what you said, which is, and I feel like I'm going to butcher it, the sphere. I feel like we're going to have to write that down.
Align your
Um,
sphere of concerns with your sphere of influence.
Thank you. Yes, I think that is brilliantly stated. And what I took away from what you just said is, especially around the point of promotion, right? To use that as an example, so take someone who's done all the work, all the things, developed all the skills, and didn't get that promotion, and instead of kind of living in that space, or at least not giving that space a lot of time, right? We're all going to have that moment where something didn't work out, and you give it however many minutes or a day that you set to just wallow in that, and then you start to rebound yourself. But I think in the rebound, I'm thinking about the skills that you learn, the network that you probably built, just trying to propel yourself there. It's like
Yeah,
taking a step back and looking at all the things that you've accomplished on that road to potentially seek out that promotion or whatever that thing is, what you're doing, right? You've probably learned a bunch of new skills. You probably got better at, attention to detail, some form of operations, project management, like all these things are quantitative skills and even some soft skills within that we forget that we've learned on the journey to potentially do the thing that we were trying to do, even if it didn't work out. So that's kind of what I'm hearing, right? Be appreciative of that point, because even within there, you probably had your head down, might not have been spending any money. You were super focused on this one thing. So
yeah,
kind of taking that look back to see like really what you did in that moment and how you've grown.
right. Yeah, 100%. And figure out what else you need to do. Like,
Yeah.
how can I grow more, right? There's the moment you stop learning is like they say it's the moment you start dying, right? Like
Hmm.
it's a real thing, right? Like if you're
Absolutely.
not learning something, if you're not adding on to those skill sets, if anything else, you're becoming less evolved, less focused, less of an asset to a company because these companies continue to grow,
Hmm.
right? You got the LLM and the AI and all of that. Like they're going to continue growing. So if you're not continually learning, you're going to fall behind. So
Oh yeah. And the point of this, in this day and age when we're competing with AI and robots out here trying to take take all the things away. I mean, we want to stay as competitive and as focused as we can in a lot of these moments, in a lot of these situations. So what does growth look like for you now? Like where do you feel like you're getting your consistent growth from? What books do you read? What podcasts do you listen to? What's that thing for you that kind of keeps you growing in all ways from a momentum standpoint?
yeah, like we discussed before, like my growth is in my networking phase. It's always been a weaker area for me. It's not as critical in the military. So that's a skill that I went 23 years without really having to develop, right? Like Uncle Sam's gonna tell you where you need to go, and all you gotta do is be successful when you get there. That's the bar,
Mhm.
right? So like for me now, I'm learning that I can't do this by myself, and it's a hard lesson to learn if I'm honest, because I always thought I could, right? I always thought I could, and perhaps I did, right? So now I'm at this point where I need to expand my network, expand the people I talk to, the knowledge that I'm consuming, the information I'm consuming, right? Like I told you, like I was watching your podcast earlier, just to kind of expand on what I think I know, right?
Mhm.
Because what I know isn't enough to get me to tomorrow. It's only enough to get me through today. So I have to always work on that, getting to know more people. If I'm honest, I buck a bit against the concept of it's not what you know, it's who you know. I think
Mhm.
it's a horrible model, right? And I think the world's going in a really bad place because of it. But I also
That
tell
is a
people all the
fact.
time,
Yeah.
yes, but stay rooted in reality. The bottom line is that's where we are. So
Mhm.
that's the skill set that I have to really develop. That's where I'm focusing. I'm working with some people that I knew from pretty far back in my past, um, on some business ventures that you know a year ago, I wouldn't have even reached out to that person just to see how they were doing, what was going on. And those kind of opportunities kind of expose themselves when you put yourself in that networking position, right? So I think that's probably the growth point for me is to stop fighting against the networking piece. Not
Mhm.
only do I not have to do it alone, I can do it better with the help of others, right? So
Oh yeah, community is the biggest thing. I actually just made a post on LinkedIn about that earlier. I feel like the more I dive in and meet people, I'm always looking at ways like how can I just close the gap and make things smaller and easier for people the same way others have done for me. So I'm like community and network are key. They're vital. Especially I just feel like in our communities, in the Black community, that's how we survived. That's how we thrived, was making sure that we had those close connections and everyone used to know each other. Everyone used to look out for each other. And we've, got away from that for
yeah, we need to get that back.
all the reasons, but yeah, we gotta bring that back, because I feel like that is what's going to propel us forward and also just kind of get us through a lot of the times that we're dealing with in this current moment, is really that reflection and resurfacing of community and what that means, and how you kind of further develop that and stay close to each other and make sure those know each other, because there's no point in having a network if you won't open it up. Right, there's no point in having that network and knowing really amazing dope people if those other dope people don't know them, right? What's the point?
And I really appreciate you doing your part in that. I mean, I think it's a pretty neat thing to watch what you're doing. I know it's what you're doing in your spare time, right? Like it's doing what you're doing because it's who you are. I think we definitely need more of that, right? It's a pretty big inspiration.
Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. And likewise, like I'm glad we get to, have the out loud conversation that we had when we first met, and
Yeah.
talk for quite a bit of time just on, all the things that we're talking about tonight, right? How do we develop community, network, impact, and build upon that from a financial perspective too, and also ensure that we're amplifying the current generations, previous generations, and then generations forward. So just to get to an unfortunate close in the conversation, which I always hate because I could talk all all day, but people are like, Um, so what would be your, advice, or just, maybe some tips that you have for those who are really looking to get where you are, right? I know you're kind of in this, growth perspective where you're trying to get past where you are, but even for someone who's like, man, I love what Rob's doing, I want to really achieve that too. I'm X years old and I want to make sure that I'm buying my house and flipping that to rental property and doing all those things. How does someone really start to shift their mindset, or what are some things that you would tell them?
It's almost like a diet, right? Like
Hmm.
accept your gains for what they are, right? You're always going to strive for more, but I think you have to definitely celebrate your victories, right? Because if you don't, I think there's this discouragement factor, right? And you kind of devolve back into whatever trends you had going on, right? I think each moment and each little small success you have, just celebrate it. Endorse the journey that I think a lot of people don't want to endorse. They kind of want to get there immediately. I know a lot of my nieces and nephews, they kind of like, hey, Uncle Rob has XYZ. So I'm gonna go get that. Well, wait, Uncle Rob had a Toyota Tercel with bullet holes in it for his first car, right?
Listen,
Like,
listen. The way I had a D taped in my Honda in my first car. Well, actually, I think that was my second. Yeah, there's unfortunate photos of that. So I'm right here with you.
yeah, just take your time, enjoy the journey, be proud of the journey, embrace that. And I think
Mhm.
that's what most of us need to do that we forget to do. And society sometimes makes us feel ashamed to do, but you have to do it. You have to be where you are.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think the one thing that I've really keep harping on for myself this year is just be where your feet are, and reminding people, or just really myself in most moments, that you can't control all the things, like all the things you said earlier. Be kind of where you are grounded. You can't worry about all this other stuff. So I
Yeah,
appreciate you kind of reiterating that for everyone, and also for myself, just as a reminder.
no doubt.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Rob, I am so excited that you came on and joined the podcast. I'm 1,000% certain I'm going to have you back, and hopefully you want to come back
No,
and
no doubt.
continue, absolutely, and continue the conversation. I feel like there's so much more for us to unpack and talk about, and even things that I'm just thinking about that were a part of this conversation. So I hope everyone listening enjoyed the conversation. Be sure to check out previous conversations and those that we have coming up on the Equity Blueprint podcast. Thanks again for coming on, Rob, and thank you all for tuning in.
Gratitude.
Absolutely. Thanks for tuning in. And if you like what you heard, make sure you share and subscribe. Tell a friend to check it out as well. See you again soon.